Excuse me. Wait a minute, I'm having an issue here with the camera. Alrighty, there we go. Hello everybody. Welcome back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. Hope you all doing well. I was gonna say happy Saturday, but it's technically Sunday now. So, really late night stream, and good to see y'all. So, let's get into this one. It's a really interesting case. A man by the name of Lee Pound. His wife ends up getting diagnosed with, I think it was pancreatic cancer she was dealing with it for about 2 years. And well, the last 9 days of her life are eventful to say the least. And really what you're going to see in this one is how our attachments could either make or break us. Okay. And it's troublesome. Okay. You can see there's regrets. There's just these attachments, obviously, to people or beings involved in her soul group, which is her family. And there's some really revealing moments. So we're going to get into this, and I really hope you enjoy this one. Okay, so.
Welcome to the Life After Life Club. Today I'm going to share with you an incredible experience that I still don't quite believe happened. And it has to do with my wife, Sheri, and her last days on earth. And it has to do with what happens in between life and death, and how we can help people make that transition a lot easier. First of all, I'm not one of those people who has studied this and taken positions on it and all of that. I came into this experience essentially a blank slate. I've read about past life experiences, I've read about stuff like that years and years ago, but I never had any experiences of any kind. I hear people hearing voices. No voices. I've heard visions. No visions. No matter what happened. I hadn't even been close to death that much. My dad just keeled over from a heart attack. I wasn't even there. My mom at the age of 89 got run over. Sad, really incredible, but it was like 2 seconds. So it was like life came along and said, okay, you're gone. And then Sheri, who was just 65, ready to go out and set the world on fire, because she had gotten her business together, she'd gotten her speaking together, she knew who she was going after for clients, she knew what she did, and she was heading out into the world to make a difference. We even joined an incredible high-end coaching program. And as we sat in the first session, she said, I'm having really trouble getting comfortable.
So imagine, she's kind of at this pinnacle. I mean, she's 65, but she's finally feeling, I don't know, like she's advancing in something, and at least according to Lee, and it all gets taken down. And it's like close to retirement age on top of it. I always think about the poor people who work their whole freaking lives like dogs, and then, they finally get their retirement, and death comes knocking. It's just too screwed up to just process, I guess. Feel bad for him.
My back is sore. Within 2 weeks, we were in the emergency room having a CAT scan. There was a surgery, then it came back, and by September of 2014, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Suddenly, our great future looked like it was going to come right back down to not much of anything. And for me, this was a shock, a surprise. For Sheri, it was the same. But I am amazed at the positive attitude that she took going through this entire process. And a lot of it came from the help that Jim had given her over the years in being able to keep a positive attitude. The doctor gave her 4 to 6 months in September of 2014. She lived 13. That just says a lot about what a positive attitude would do. And I knew her pretty well. I knew some of the things about her background, and I knew all of that. But as we got close in through July, August, September of 2015, and she started to decline pretty fast, she finally reached a point where she said, I don't want to linger. I don't want to stay around. I just want to close my eyes and be done. That's it. And she even said, I don't even think there is anything afterward. I just want it to be over. And you'll hear a little bit about why that idea got into her head and what it caused.
Yeah, and boy, is he spot on with that. Wait till you see how this rolls out
as we go through the story. So we're going through, we finally end up in hospice. The nurse is coming every 3 days. It's body deteriorating, guests coming, friends coming in. Eventually she said, I'm really ready to go. Let's not have any more visitors. And then we had a few friends come in, and then we had a few more days go by. And none of us knew what was going to happen. None of us. Finally, on November 1st, and my book is called 9 Days in November. It's the last 9 days of her life. On November 1st, 2015, her friend Denise was staying with her overnight. They woke up, Sheri looked up and said, okay, I'm going now. And she closed her eyes. I came out about half an hour later, and I looked. And at first, okay, eyes closed, but then I noticed she seemed to be working awfully hard at it. Like tense. I thought, this doesn't look like somebody who's about ready to go anywhere. So a couple of friends who were staying came over and they said, we're going to stay overnight. Hospice was still coming in once every 3 days. Everybody was getting exhausted. Her friend Susan Leone came over and said, I will stay until 3 o'clock in the morning. Then I'll stay here while you sleep. Kathy, who was another friend of ours. Susan got a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. Her husband was in hospice. He was taking a turn for the worse. She had to leave. Susan was a 30-year friend of Sheri's who wanted to stay. She wanted to be there for the whole thing. So she left. So I get up. Kathy's here. Denise is here. Sheri's about ready to go. And this is what she wanted. This is what we thought she wanted. Just close her eyes and be gone. She didn't go anywhere. She just stayed exactly the same. And then I checked my email, and there was an email in there from one of the Japanese students who'd stayed with us about 10 years earlier. She and her mother were flying in from Tokyo to see her. And I said, I don't know if you're even going to be able to talk to her. But they arrived. They walked in the door, and Sheri opened her eyes, and she talked. She even got on the phone with the sister in Formosa, and then she talked to me for a little while, and then she went back and closed her eyes again. And Kathy, who was her best friend from 35 years ago, took me aside and said, look, we're exhausted. I don't know how long this is going to go. It doesn't sound like long, but I've checked with hospice. I've checked the materials. There may be something else we can do. I'm going to talk to the nurse in the morning. We went to bed. Maybe she would slip away and we would be finished. So we get up the next morning, Monday morning, November 2nd. Sheri's still there. No change. The hospice nurse comes by, and she looks at Sheri and says, after Kathy said, is there anything else you can do? She said, we're giving you 24-hour nursing care. We thought, wow, we'll take it. Bring it on.
Now, mind you, I've been around hospice situations. I've researched it a lot. When they, come and say that, that means the writing's on the wall. They know it's usually happening, and because of how cheap and ridiculous insurance companies are and that whole mess, at least here in the United States, you're lucky if you're going to get them in there 24, 48 hours ahead of time. And even then, it might not even happen at all. A lot of times, at least what I've witnessed is, especially with my girlfriend's father, they basically, overdose you. That's what they do. Some people are in so much pain that, they kind of dish out the final blow, so to say, to ease their suffering. And, you consider yourself lucky if you've got that kind of care around the clock, let alone multiple days. And I think this stretched out like another week, if I recall.
The nurse will be here at 5 o'clock. Everybody breathed a sigh of relief. We've been taking care of the body so much that we hadn't even thought about her spirit, her soul. We hadn't even thought about how we would take care of that. And now this would give us a chance to concentrate in a different way. And we thought, for however long it is, and then I thought, yeah, however long it is. And I asked the nurse, how long will it be? The nurse said, from everything I've seen, 12 to 24 hours.
Yeah, see, like that's a prime example. Like he's saying the nurse thinks it's 12 to 24 hours. And when do they put on the, around the clock care? And, 24 hours out, 36 hours out max. I mean, it's amazing. They know it's incredible how they can sometimes get it down to almost exact, like within hours sometimes, of just by looking in at the signs and reading the whole situation of the patient. So this lines up pretty much with what's to be expected for most, at least here in the States, with horrible insurance.
And so we're prepared. We're ready. We go to bed that night. We get up in the morning. The next nurses come in. There was a little problem with the nurse because she did some things that she wasn't supposed to do. And we had to realize, well, we got to watch the nurses again or get a different one. Sheri's still there. Our head nurse comes in and says, wow, she's still here. And so we go through Monday and there's no change, nothing happening, nothing going on. Tuesday morning, the nurses call and say, do we have to come? Yes, you have to come. She's still here. So the head nurse comes. I don't know what's going on, she says. And we sit with her, we hold her hand, and we do all of the things you're supposed to. You know, it's okay to go, it's okay to do this, it's okay to do that. And we go to bed and we get up Wednesday morning and it's the same thing. She's still here. The head nurse comes in. I got to rearrange stuff. I got to get more people in here. We got to find some temporaries. And Kathy and I are sitting beside Sheri. Kathy is quiet for a while. And then she says, "Do you mind if I tell you something?" And I said, "What?" Kathy said, "You know I'm a human relations executive. But here's the other thing you don't know. I've been working to become what we call a death midwife, someone who helps people cross over. I've studied a lot. I've worked with a few people. Something's going on here. I don't know what it is. Would it be okay if we did a short visualization where I guide her across a plane? This is all metaphorical, over a bridge and across a plane and up a mountain where she can relax and see if that helps." And of course, I'd heard of stuff like this. I'd never seen it, never been there, but why not? Why not? Let's do it. So Kathy sits down, takes Sheri's.
I just want to say, now, with everything you're about to hear, just remember this moment that this person came in during the end of life care for Lee and Sheri, okay? And the objective is to help Sheri. All right? And when you hear everything that happens, just think back to this moment, because I think it's too perfect that this situation would present itself to Lee and in turn affect Sheri and how she moves on. Really, really interesting. So try to remember this moment.
And says what we're going to do and starts through. And they get about halfway there. And Kathy all of a sudden has this surprised look on her face. She said, Sheri just stopped and said, "Stop it. I'm not going there." Just stop. So they stopped. Kathy comes back and she says, "I don't know what's going on. I've never had this happen before. Nobody's talked back to me before." Well, if you knew Sheri, you knew if she wanted something, she'd probably talk back. Well, she did. Something was going on. We didn't know what. So Kathy said, "You know, maybe she has some people she has to either talk to or forgive or something like that."
And, not to draw it on too much, but that's a huge part of it. A big thing that can bring someone down on their deathbed is if they feel they have this unfinished business or regrets or various attachments, whatever the case may be. And what I'm trying to put across is that you shouldn't have any of these attachments. Try to work on yourself while you're here, while you're available to do it. Take care of whatever thing may be eating away at you while you're here now. Don't wait. Get it over with. Work on it. Clear the air. Do what you got to do. And it will pay off and make things easier in the end.
Would it be okay if I kind of go back into this space? And I'm going to make a distinction here. There's our space where we're in the room, in the living room, beside the bed. And there's this other space, halfway between here and there, where we're about to go. So Kathy says, "I'm going to set up a place where we can meet Sheri, her spirit. And I'm going to call her in, and I'm going to do the Hawaiian forgiveness mantra with her and have her do that with as many people as she wants. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, if it helps, it's okay. And so she did. She set up a chair, and people would come in. And so I'm standing there by the bed. And I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I did. I thought, I wonder what this actually looks like. And it was like a lens opened up. And there was this kind of sandy, cave-like area with a distant bright light. And there was a spark with Sheri, and I stepped into it. And it was like I was standing next to her while she did the forgiveness exercise. I didn't know if I was supposed to be there or not. This was outside experience, but I'm holding her hand, not physically, but spiritually.
I had the mic muted, sorry. So this is, bordering on obviously a shared death experience, not a full one as you'll see, but pretty damn close to it. And I find it interesting that, he was also brought into the picture, which isn't, I guess all that shocking because it's her husband. You know what I mean? So these things can happen. But again, think about what I mentioned earlier in that moment. We talked about, and I said, hey, remember this, and how everything rolls out. It seems so scripted and destined to happen. And in my opinion, the Matrix is using Lee and everyone involved in this to the fullest extent to get her to give herself away. But the problem is, as you'll see too, is that Sheri is holding on desperately to attachments and regret.
And watched it happen. It didn't take long, just a few minutes. And then Kathy comes back, I step back, and then I think, should I tell her? Yes, I should tell her. So I said, Kathy, here's what I did. I actually stepped into that spot. And Kathy looks a little surprised, and she says, what did you see? I described it. And she said, that's exactly what I'm seeing. You can come along on any of our journeys. There was also a third person with us by then. Her name was Sheri Jolly. She was another longtime friend. And the three of us became the team that started to guide Sheri. And we are completely at sea at this point. We don't know what's going on. What is wrong? What is happening? Why is she holding back? And Kathy said, I've never heard of this before. This hasn't happened to me. I know somebody who might be able to help us a little bit more. She's a friend of another friend. She's a shaman type. Can I call her? I said, well, let's keep that in mind just in case. So we go to bed, get up next morning. She's still there. The nurse is there. Kathy comes up to me and she says, by the way, we can communicate, but we can also physically communicate. I just found a way to do it. There's this little oxygen monitor they stick on your finger, and it monitors the heart rate and the oxygen level. And it's been on her finger for days now. It's been stuck at 2 spots. Heart rate about 135, oxygen about 98%. And Kathy said, if I want her to say yes, she can bump one of those up. If I want her to say no, she can bump it down. And we told the nurse. And the nurse says, you can't do that. It's not even connected to her. She can't control that thing. So she said, I'll show you. She pulls it off the finger, lets it reset to 0. shoves it back on another finger, and we look. It shoots up to 500%, stays there for about 5 seconds, then comes back down to the same numbers it had been all along. The nurse looks, walked away. So here we are, things are starting to happen. And then I thought, you know what? This isn't the first unusual thing I heard. Now I remember we were sitting around a few days before Sheri went unconscious, and half a dozen of us, and she looked up and she said, "Do you see all the people around here? Some of them are dead and some of them are alive, and my guide is sitting over on the couch." We looked around and there's nobody there except us. And then she just went on to something else. And so now this comes back. Now wait a minute, things are starting to get interesting here. I'm not sure what's going on. So we, Wednesday night go to bed and we come back Thursday morning. And Kathy says, why don't we do one more visualization and see if all of this stuff has done any good? Has it or hasn't it? So we sit down by the bed, and she starts again. She says, by the way, I'm going to make a molehill out of that mountain. Maybe the mountain scared her. And so she starts across the bridge, and she goes across the plain. Halfway there, Kathy all of a sudden really looks upset. She said, "Sheri just read me out." I said, "Stop it. Don't do that. Don't tell me what to do. I'm not going anywhere. Just stop it."
I like that. See, I like Sheri. She's like, don't tell me what to do. Don't be messing with me. She's standing her ground, but the problem is that it's based in those attachments and regrets. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's important to keep pointing that out.
She said, "I gotta call that shaman." So we went through the afternoon. Friday morning, she did make the phone call. I mean, this is a long ways in. And so we're sitting there Friday morning, and all of a sudden, her friend from Dana Point, Joy Tash, comes running in the front door and says, "Sheri woke me up 3 times last night and said, 'Get down here.' So here I am. What's going on?" Not much. We're still trying to figure out what's going on here at all. And then there was another knock on the door. And our neighbor from across the walkway, Diane Wood, who's here today, came over. And I'd like to have Diane tell you what she said. Diane, can you come up here?
While we're waiting for Diane, I'd like to thank AA for the very kind super chat. Thank you so much.
Because this is, again, another little odd thing. So tell us what happened Wednesday and Thursday.
Outside
on the
patio.
porch.
Well, hi, everybody. As Lee was saying, Sheri was my neighbor and a very good friend. And she was a crack-up. You had to know the woman. She wasn't a serious person at all. She took everything seriously, but she wasn't a glum-faced worrywart or anything like that. She wanted to have fun, and she lived for life. Life had to keep her going, but she lived for it. So everything for Sheri was way up here, sometimes unreachable. But she was just hysterical. And he's talking about all these times the nurses were coming in and they were going to bed and people coming in and out the door. Well, I was one of those people. And Sheri had enough sense about her to know when I was there, I'd say hi to her. I said, "It's Diane." And she wouldn't say a word to me. She'd just be laying on the bed or the couch that she was spread out on. And I'd sit down next to her and I said, "What can I do? How can I help you?" And she'd pick up her foot and she'd throw both feet in my lap. She wanted a foot massage. So I started.
Smart woman, right? I want a foot massage on my way out. Well, actually, no, I don't want to deal with anybody on my way out, but sounds nice.
Massaging your foot. her feet. I got lotion, and I was just really going to town on her feet. She had the prettiest feet. So and that was my comforting thing to her. That was the way I could reach her, was by massaging her feet for her. And we all know that the girls do, us girls do, and probably some men, when we get a pedicure, that's the best part, is the massage. You know, so we all like that. It releases a lot of tension. And I could feel her just relax and go down. And sometimes she'd be asleep when I was through, and sometimes she wouldn't let me go. She'd say no, and I'd be rubbing those feet until my arms were sore. But that's what she wanted. So, do you want me to talk about the nighttime? The nighttime. Okay, this is at night, and of course I'm trying not to be a nosy, bothersome neighbor dealing with Sheri. I'm going when needed and checking what was needed, etc. And I'd gone to bed one night with Sheri on my mind. I just kind of fell asleep thinking, I don't know what else I can do. Because all of her needs were supposedly being taken care of. All of her best friends were there. Lee he should have been I don't know what you were, but you were there with your sword through the whole thing. And so I got up, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, looked out the window.
This gets really interesting, so pay attention to this part, guys.
It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, looked out the window because I could see the whole front of their house from my place, saw the whole front, and I looked out the window, and I saw a woman, about our age. She was sitting on the little front patio area that they have in front of their house, and there was a lawn furniture on there. And I stood there at the window just kind of looking and thinking about Sheri, and then all of a sudden I see this woman sitting outside on the sofa thing, and I thought, well, who's that? And I didn't know. I thought maybe they'd called, and it was one of the nurses from inside. She had come out to get some fresh air, so I just kind of stood there and watched her for a while, and then she'd be gone, and then she'd be there. So I thought, well, I'm half asleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. What do I know what I'm doing? So I'm watching, and I'm looking, and I thought, she looks familiar. She had this tons of curls, black curly hair. It was beautiful, gorgeous, gorgeous curls. And she had thrown a red Afghan type of a blanket around her shoulders as she sat outside on this chair. And it must have been cold. Well, it was just November, it was cold. And she was shaking like this. You know, you get cold, you get the chills, and you get all tightened up and you shake. And I thought, well, why doesn't she go in the house? God, she's sitting out there. And she was out there for a while, and I couldn't go back to sleep, so I kept watching her. Can you guys hear me? I feel like I'm going in and out with this thing. Okay. So I was there doing that, and I kept watching her. And she was so cold, this woman, that I saw, she was shivering, just shivering enough so I could see her body shake with the shivers across the lawn. So I thought, well, she'll go in when she gets too cold. So I went back to bed, fell asleep. Got up the next morning, went over to give her my foot rub. And I said I don't know at what point I said it to you.
I think it was Friday.
I can't remember. But I said, who's out there last night? I said, I saw somebody on the patio at 3 o'clock in the morning, shivering and shaking. Had black curly hair, and she had this red Afghan thrown across her shoulders. I said, who was over here at that time of the night? And didn't get any kind of response from everybody. We just looked at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that person, I wanted to go outside and see this person at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I was just a little bit spooked. I didn't know what it was, but I just couldn't do it. But I wanted to go out and talk to her and see how Sheri was. Maybe something happened. And that person that was on the patio area was not there in the morning, of course. So I asked around. Nobody knew who I was talking about. And Lee said, no, nobody but us has been here. So I figured that was somebody that was coming for Sheri. Sheri wasn't waiting, so she had to wait out on the patio in the cold, shivering. And it just happened, and I think she died within what?
About 3 or 4 days.
about 3-4 days after that. I never saw the woman again, and it wasn't anybody that we knew. That was one of the caretakers that kept popping in for her. So anyway, that's where I came into the picture, so I can verify everything he's saying. So enjoy the rest of the speak.
Wild, huh? Wild. Between two worlds. And, not to go too off topic, but I mean, I don't know. Some of you out there may remember George Steinbrenner of the Yankees. This guy reminds me of him. I mean, it's almost, oops, what the frick? Why does it got to do that? Why? All right, forget it. It's just, whoa. All right, anyways, I was trying to get the image up, but it was kind of off. Anyways, all right, so let's move along.
Okay, so this was kind of an unusual thing. Who's sitting on our front porch? Kathy had no idea. Maybe it's a guard or a sentinel or a who knows what. So at any rate, Friday morning, after all of these people had come through and all this stuff has happened, and Sheri's still laying there, no change whatsoever. No change. Kathy calls the shaman, who says, I'm busy all day, but I'll call you back at 5. So we went through the day and we did what we had to do and we took care of her and we talked to her. And one thing that we did that I remember is we all sat around the bed just holding our hands over her like we were giving her energy. And while we're doing that, and her cat, Chico, got up on the bed as well and was doing it. So there were 4 of us.
So even the cat got in on it. That's interesting.
And as we're doing this, I kind of had that lens open up again and kind of felt like I was back down in this space where she was. And instead of seeing the 4 people around, I saw 3 bright lights, like there was energy coming down. And I thought, 3, there's 4 of us. No, wait a minute. I'm down here. There's only 3 of them up there. We did that for a little while.
So again, this is, bordering on shared death experience. I mean, that's really what's going on here, but it's kind of like they keep going in and out of it because of Sheri's resistance.
And we just comforted and we talked and we thought, what's going on? And I thought, I don't know. I know she had some problems years ago. I know there were a few things like that, but let's see what the shaman says. So at 5 o'clock, the shaman calls. And so Kathy answers and she explains the situation, and the shaman says, well, put your hands on her feet so we can get a connection and I'll see what I can see. About a minute later, the shaman says, her mother is blocking her from going over. And you got to do something about it.
It's like the NDEs. It's just like the NDEs. It's not your time yet. You have unfinished business. You have a mission to complete, whatever the case may be. And here is mom blocking Sheri from going through. In Sheri's own attachments and trauma and resentments play a huge role in this. But then you have the Archonic Mother that is preventing Sheri from moving on too. So it's like a combination of Sheri's own problems that she's battling within, and then of course the Matrix mom representative. Roll out the mother.
And Kathy thinks this is like totally out of left field. What's going on here? And Kathy thinks, I'll put the phone by Sheri's ear and this gal can talk her through it. No problem. And the woman says, no, you're going to do it. You, Kathy, are going to do it. You have to get her reconciled with her mother before she passes.
So this is round one of, what needs to be worked on before Sheri is allowed to leave.
And Kathy says, I don't know what to do. The woman says, get out a pen. And she wrote for about 15 minutes. Directions. What are we going to do? Then Kathy gathers us around and she says, we've got to do this. We got to do this now. And here's what we need. We need a red ribbon. We need some candles. We need white rose or red rose. These are things to kind of protect us. And we need to call in some guards, spiritual guards.
So see, we're going into full-on ritual territory, and I would like to give a big thank you for your kind and generous super chat, Pale Horse Rider. Thank you kindly. Appreciate you.
To guard the bed and Sheri and her soul while we do this. And I said, well, who? And she named off about, well, there were 8 of them. I don't have all of their names. But they were all, shall we say, the top spiritual masters in virtually every faith and religion.
Okay, so you have basically the who's who of Matrix, parasitic controllers, illusionists, deceivers, working on Sheri and the family.
Who came and gathered around to help us make this work. So Kathy says to Sheri Jolly, I have to tie this red ribbon to my wrist and to yours because we're going up into a place that can be a little dangerous. And you're going to have to pull me back if I get stuck. And we need to light the candles, and we need to have all of this going on. And then we need to call Sheri in and tell her what's going on. We're going to go up into what she called a matrix area. It's several levels, and the second level is where all of Sheri's spiritual connections are.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, the wordage of the matrix, talking about the layers, how all of Sheri's, I guess you can call it memories, or maybe her essence is there too, for all we know, because it's still attached to this body, right? I don't know, but it's interesting to hear it in these terms, and how there's, he's working with this other person, and they're protecting one another, and traversing through, or working on traversing through, to help her out.
And she said, I have to go in there, but it's dangerous because you can get tangled up in all of this. But what Sheri has to do is call in her mother and her father and her stepfather and mend the relations. And I'll explain what the relations were. Sheri grew up in Yuma, Arizona, 10 miles out into the desert. So she was isolated. She had 2 parents who were both drunks. They were abusive, they were yelling, they went to bars, they were, and then mother always told Sheri, you're no good, your grades are never good enough. She gets an A, the mother wants an A+. She gets an A+, mother wants an A++. There was a divorce. I have incredible notes that Sheri put in her notebook, and think she said even when she was 60 about this, about how it had affected her and how it had taken a lot of her spirit away and a lot of her self-confidence.
See? Listen to that. I mean, that is a key moment right there. I mean, obviously we already know this, but she's admitted this, at age 60 to Lee.
I think she said even when she was 60 about this, about how it had affected her and how it had taken a lot of her spirit away and a lot of her self-confidence. And I could see it. Like, she was very fun, she was very competent, was a counselor, she was a therapist, she was amazing at what she did, but she always could get to a certain level and no more. She was married once for 6 months and single for 20 years. Could never get a relationship together.
And see, this is how much the Matrix can break someone down. One example of billions out there and how the system functions and breaks us down lifetime after lifetime. And that's why we got to rise above it all and say enough is enough. We're going to stand in non-interference, sovereignty, liberation. Key components to escaping the Matrix at the time of natural death, in my opinion. I don't think there are any other options, because anything else is kind of veering off and not playing it safe. And the biggest thing I talk about on the channel is about us playing it safe. You know, put the maximum amount of safeguards in place so that there is no room for error. There's no room to get your attention set on a whole thing, a bunch of distractions, so that you're veering off and paying attention to all the illusions and deceptions within the Matrix. No, all of it has to fall by the wayside, all of it. And so that you can stand on your own footing and do what's right for you. Because I think anything outside of there is just far too risky. That's my opinion, but I'm going to stand by it till the day I'm gone.
I was the first one that she got together, and we lasted 24 years. So I knew some of this. I found out other parts of it when I went through all the stuff later. But the words, "her mother is blocking her," resonated, because her mother was so awful to her. And then the shaman said, "Almost everybody passes over, but mother never did."
Whoa. It's pretty deep stuff right there. Pretty deep stuff. Hear that one more time.
And then the shaman said, "Almost everybody passes over, but mother never did." There was something keeping her here. And I have a feeling a lot of it was Sheri's resentment towards her.
So it's the disembodied spirit who hasn't moved on. And if I had to guess, that Sheri's mother, like Lee said, that perhaps it was all the resentment that Sheri had that kind of kept, I guess, emitting to her mother, that kept her here. And if I had to go out further on a limb, I would say that the guilt that Sheri's mom had when she died and before dying is something that would logically should eat away at a person and realize how wrong they did their daughter. So something to think about. So it's attachments and soul group all around.
Because there were things like, at the age of 4, her mother tells her, "Don't call me mommy." And Sheri said, "I had to ask her what her name was so I'd know what to call her." 50 years later, she still calls her Willa instead of mother. So it had a huge effect. And so we're thinking, okay, we got to do this. And we step into the in-between world, and we see the steps going up to the Matrix. And Kathy says to Sheri Jolly and I, "You stay on the first level. We'll be up on the second." We see 5 spirits come in. One is the good part of mother, one is the bad part of mother. One is the good part of father, one is the bad part of father. They've split. And one is her stepfather. The two pieces of each one come together, and Sheri faces each one up on this stand, up in this area, this level, and they talk. They have to agree on whether they're going to keep the connection or not. And they do. And Sheri cuts the connection with both her father and mother, and they fly off. And then she turns to her stepfather, who she was mad at because he died on her at the age of 95. Last living relative, and he was a stepfather. And she was ready to cut the ties, and he looked at her and he said, "No, not yet. We still have things to do together."
Oh. Did you hear that, guys? Come on. Come on. See, this is the soul group. That's the soul group right in our faces. I mean, you know, as if it's not confirmed in a bunch of other experiencer cases. But, I mean, here it is, right on the deathbed, baby.
And she was ready to cut the ties. And he looked at her and he said, "No, not yet. We still have things to do together. We still have things to do together." Now, you start to see what's happening here.
Oh, yes, we do.
They have a future. Where's that future? Could it be here again? Maybe. Could it be in this intermediate area? Could it be there? Could be all of the above. So I'm starting to get pictures of how this whole thing is working out there. So we finish with that. We all come down. We come back to Sheri's spot. She's exhausted. We go out and have some dinner. Kathy says, "Whew, I am so tired. I need a big steak." So we go down to the Lone Star Steakhouse, which is, I guess, dead now. And we had a big steak. We come back, and the shaman is called and said, "By the way, there's two other questions. Was she married before?" "Yes, but it was inconsequential." "And did she like Christmas?" She loved Christmas. She had parties. She had this big tree up every year. We decorated. We had presents. We had friends over. Christmas was her favorite holiday of the year, and she was going to miss it. So Kathy says, "Think of a gift, both Sheri Jolly and I, and let's go have Christmas with Sheri." And I thought of one. The three of us went down back to this place where we have set up for her, and call Sheri in, and she comes, and Kathy says, "We're going to do Christmas." And Sheri's all happy, and she jumps around, and she says, "Wow, wonderful." Says, "Decorate this place any way you want." Big Christmas tree goes up, lights, balls, everything, star on the top, garland all over the place. She's making this a big festival. And so we say, "We have gifts for you." I think Sheri Jolly gave her a little carved cat. She loved cats, a pin, lapel pin. And I don't remember what Kathy gave her, but I gave her this beautiful red furry coat. She loved red. She loved fur. And she's dancing around and having a good time. And we're about ready to leave. You know, we've got one step out. She says, "No, wait. I have gifts for you. These are all spiritual gifts. Nothing physical."
Now, see, like, I mean, really, I mean, this is a good guy here. You know, he just wants what's best for Sheri. And he's doing all he can with the help from others. See, why can't something like this
it is a good thing, obviously, but why can't it be a good thing that doesn't involve the Matrix deception? I mean, why can't this whole thing be ethical? Why does it have to be so absurd and so taxing and so corrupt? It just eats away at me to see this, because you see a good man here. You see Sheri lived a good life, or not a good life, I'm sorry, a very difficult life, but luckily she found Lee. And here she is battling in the end with the Matrix.
So we come back in. She gives Kathy a beautiful crystal ball.
Hey, Michael.
It says, now you can go out and help other people like you're helping me. And then she turned to Sheri Jolly and gave her an amazing beaded necklace. She loved beading. She made gifts like that for everybody. And a bracelet, and said, now you look sexy. And that was the first in-joke between two people that Kathy did not know. So she didn't know what this meant. It seems that Sheri Jolly had been single for 18 years after her divorce, and she'd been looking for a guy, dating all sorts of people. Sometimes she dressed a bit provocatively, and Sheri would always tease her about being too sexy. And so it was the little in-joke between the two of them that Kathy knew nothing about, yet Kathy brought it out. And that was my first thought, that, now wait a minute, something really is happening here. Something's going on. And then she turned to me and she said, here is this beautiful pocket watch. And it has Disney hands on it, Mickey Mouse, because she loves Disney. And it doesn't tick. And she said, it doesn't tick because here there is no time or space. This is the gift of eternity. And I thought, wow. What do you say after that?
Okay, so I'm going to take a 5-minute break and we'll be right back. Thank you for your patience, my friends. See you shortly. All right, we are back, my friends. Just to remind you that this channel is for educational purposes only. And this is just my opinion. Sorry if I burped in your face. Thought I hit the mute button, but maybe I didn't. Sorry if I did. All right. So, we're going to get back into Lee's testimony of his wife's deathbed, him and his wife's deathbed experiences, along with a group of other people.
We made our departure, and we just looked at each other like, okay, I think maybe we did it. Maybe we finished. Maybe we're done. She should be at peace now. We all go to bed. Saturday morning comes. We walk in. It's possible she slipped away at night, but no, she's still there. No change whatsoever. Something's still going on. Now, you see the picture up here. There's a beautiful dog in this picture of Sheri and I. That dog came from Mexico. Sheri spoke fluent Spanish. She had a godson in Mexico. She's not Mexican, but she had a great affinity for the Spanish language and the Mexican people, and in her consulting taught people how to work, taught bosses how to work with their Hispanic employees and trained them, the Hispanics, in leadership in Spanish. So we have this, we wake up in the morning and she had a godson in Mexico. And Sheri Jolly said, did we ever get in touch with him? And I thought, you know what, I never did hear from him. So I went and scrambled up his email to him and his aunt, and I sent them an email and told them what was going on. We got this email back from him, and they'd been estranged a bit because of an incident that happened down here at one point. And so she really hadn't talked to him in a while. He said, oh no, I don't know what I'm going to do without her. She was like a mother to me, which she was. We went down there quite a few times. It was our second family. It was an amazing relationship. And I sat there and read that email to Sheri, unconscious as she was. And Kathy in the kitchen said, when you read that, I felt an enormous wave of joy come through the kitchen. Like she was, wow, I'm so glad to hear from him.
And, this could be one checkbox that Sheri has to check in order to kind of proceed, I guess you can say.
We thought, well, okay, maybe that helped. Then
But there's more.
I go to lunch, come back, and we're still the same, no change. None at all. And I'm beginning to wonder what else could there be? Because I knew she had things to deal with. I knew she had problems, and we saw it. And so we thought, well, let's go back into the matrix and see if we can resolve the relationships with the Mexican godson and with the godson's aunt.
Oh, man. Let's just go back into the matrix. Let's go back into the web of lies and deceit.
And I'm also going to call in what's called the ancestors, who are spirits that may be connected physically, biologically or whatever with her, to come in and help and see if we can just make it easier for her. And she did. And so we prepared and got our stuff all set up and went back into the matrix. And Kathy said, stay on the lower level, don't go up to the second level. And while I was there, I kept kind of popping up to see what was up there, and I could see a couple more levels in the back, far away, going off in the distance, that I couldn't make out what was on them, but they must have been even earlier relationship matrices of Sheri's.
Early matrix relationships of Sheri's. Yeah. Past lives and who knows what. I mean, again, like, we have to take into consideration, and this is completely on the table, is that, you know, just because we came to the earth realm doesn't mean that we didn't experience a bunch of other realms within this matrix system. We could be thrown around like rag dolls over and over and over again, completely lost. Like, who knows? Maybe one lifetime we come to Earth, next lifetime we go to some other physical reality or an etheric reality, and then eventually I'll end up back here or in some form of like this, and we could just be spinning our wheels all over the place and have no clue because of this stupid memory wipe. Remember, we come here lifetime after lifetime, not knowing where we came from, why we are here, where we are going. And it happens over and over and over again. There's a reason why we don't have our memories. And that's because it is, you know, part and parcel of this diabolical system that we find ourselves in. But there's hope. There's not just hope, it's our intention is key. Again, non-interference, sovereignty, liberation. That's the whole ball game. Don't give in to anything. Stand your ground, do your thing, don't interact, and go your own way. Free yourself that way at the time of natural death.
That's my thought at this point. And she confronted the spiritual parts of her godson and her godson's aunt. Kept one of them and let one of them go, and I don't know which one.
Exactly, Peter.
So we're walking back down the steps. Her stepfather joins us, and he's right there with us. And we look off in the distance to Sheri's area, and we see a huge crowd of spirits and souls in that area.
You mean the welcoming committee? Yeah, the ones that are waiting?
We see 3 or 4 people in front that look like they're in charge or whatever it is.
You know, the number 3 comes up all the time, right? And granted, yeah, it could be more. It could even be 1, but the number 3 pops up a lot, and all I keep thinking about every time I hear that number, because it's always in relation to, like he said, listen to what he said.
Front that look like they're in charge or what.
They were in charge. I think Council of Elders. That's what it seems to be. At least that's what they're called, the Council of Elders, those that are in charge. And you know, I could be wrong, but this seems to pop up enough that I think we can probably establish it as some sort of data point here, because it's consistent enough that it has to be taken into consideration. And it always relates to, like he said, someone in charge. And then it's always someone in charge with past life regressions or life between lives. And even these DMT entities, sometimes they'll see the group and they'll feel like they're in charge. Or breakthrough trip entities. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Now, again, I'm not saying it happens in every case, but it happens enough where it's something to look out for in your own research.
Whatever it is. And as we walk towards them, Kathy notices a bundle in one of their hands. She says, I don't know what that is. But we move closer. Sheri's still a little distracted. She's holding her stepfather's hand. And then Kathy says, it's a child. It must be one of the ancestors' children or something to comfort her or something.
Take a guess at what this is. I was able to spot it right away. I'm sure many of you are too, but it's obviously an earthly attachment.
And Sheri suddenly notices. And all of a sudden she's horrified. She steps back. She says, stop. No, no, no. Get that away from me. I don't want that. No, no, no. And she's ready to run. Her stepfather grabs her hand and says, no, no, take it. It's a gift. It's a gift. And Sheri hesitates a moment and then reaches out 2 hands, holds the child this far out. Something passes between them. Kathy's saying, I don't know what this is about. I have no idea who this is. And then she draws the child in close, walks over to the sleeping area we've set up, and the 2 of them lay down and go to sleep. And we move back into the living room. There's tears, there's emotion. Kathy is saying, what just went on there? I have no idea what just happened. I said, I know what happened, because I had heard the story. It seems that when Sheri was 22, she'd gotten pregnant and had an abortion, and never emotionally dealt with it. I think her whole problem in not going over was the fear of facing her mother and the fear of facing the child she hadn't let live. The room was a lot more peaceful all of a sudden. Sheri's breathing changed a little bit. We had all had a good cry. It was just such an emotion-filled moment. And one of the nurses had joined us on that last journey, so she had seen the whole thing as well. Then a little bit later...
So yeah, you can see how this is part of the guilt trip, part of the attachment, and how something like this could easily eat away at someone. And, Sheri probably dealt with it on some level, but not fully. This is something that probably stuck with her till the end. Obviously, obviously it stuck with her till the end. But this is how the whole system functions, right? It's the fear, guilt, shame matrix. That's what I like to call it, because that is really what it's centered around. And of course you have love. I guess you could call it the fear, guilt, shame, love matrix. But it's centered around getting us sucked in by any means possible. It could be the smallest thing or the biggest thing. But as long as you're clinging to it, the matrix is happy.
Yeah, we were just exhausted. We just chatted a little bit about it. We talked to Sheri. We just kind of sat there. This nurse, who is the night charge nurse in charge of the whole thing, comes in. Very professional looking, all business, does the thing she has to do, checks the meters, and goes away. And we realize we've missed something. The morphine meter wasn't checked or reset, so we had to call her back. She came back in, and she looked around, and she saw we had some aromatherapy stuff out and things like that. And she said, okay, I'm taking my nurse hat off, putting my spiritual hat on. And she sat beside the bed, this is 11 o'clock at night, for like half an hour. Not a sound in the room. It's just communing. And then she looks up and she says, she's at peace now, she's farther away. You don't have to do any more journeys. Just let her absorb, let her process, and let time take its course. And she said all of the Indian tribes are drumming for her, even the Blackfeet who usually don't. And just get some rest. And she left. One other friend of ours who was there, Michelle, and about 10 o'clock she'd gone out the door to go home. And she said she went to her car, which was parked across the street, and nothing was around. It's 10 o'clock at night, it's dark. She got in the car, looked in the mirror, and she sees a coyote sitting back behind the car.
Now, what I find interesting is what he says next. And if you think about the movie Soul, too, I forgot the entity.
Coyote sitting back behind the car.
Is it
And it was there for a little bit, and then it left. And she said she looked it up, and she found the coyote is some kind of either a trickster or a sentinel or a symbol that could be saying, good job.
Now, what's really interesting is if you've seen the movie Soul, or the animated movie Soul, you see the coyote, the trickster, that is represented by multiple characters, even though it's the same. It shows how the deception is being represented by the same beings, but they're just playing off one another. Again, it's like the duality, the good, the bad, and it's just trying to get anyone who crosses over into its grips. But at that point, once they're in there, it's like this endless loop. Think about 22 who's in there, been there dealing with this crap, doesn't want to go back to Earth. It is very vocal about it, and yet she's still stuck in it. And this whole parade that's been going on with Sheri this whole time is really revealing. And for this to pop up and for even Lee to say this is interesting. So, yeah, seriously, I think that's a huge moment, even though it's not, obviously, considering everything we've heard. I think it's a very interesting moment just because the whole connection between everything really fits well.
A little bit, and then it left. And she said she looked it up, and she found the coyote is some kind of either a trickster or a sentinel or a symbol that could be saying, good job. You did well. And she went home. So Sunday morning, we woke up. This is the 8th day. We come in, and her breathing, Sheri's breathing is totally different. It's a breath, 15 seconds, another one. It's really slowing down now, finally. There was one crisis. The machine ran out of morphine, and we had a whole rigmarole. Finally, the nurses said, we have to do a few things to clean her up a bit. Just go out and have some coffee somewhere. And a friend of ours, Denise, who had started the whole thing 8 days before, came and joined us, and we told her the whole story at that point. And she was surprised and, kind of wowed by the whole thing.
It's from Disney Pixar.
So we come back and we just sit there and we hold her hand and we, she's just, whatever it is, she's communing with whatever she needs to commune with. And we figure maybe she'll just slip away this at night. But no, comes Monday morning, still there. Very slow breathing, but still there. And I thought, and Sheri Jolly said, you know what? She always wanted to know what people would say about her at the memorial. And we have all kinds of emails. We never could put that together for her to hear. But I went back and copied all these into a document and sent it to Kathy's phone, and Sheri Jolly read it to her, including one about our little dog that we'd had to give away, who had found a beautiful home. And so she finished that, and we're sitting there at 9:30 Monday morning. The front door opens. And remember Susan Leone, whose husband passed away, who had to leave, comes bursting in the door, walks up to the bed. That was the moment Sheri left. That instant. And we all just stood there, no tears. It was like a celebration. We had given her a gift, and she had given us a gift that neither of us thought anybody could give. I called Jim. He said a prayer for us. And now that it was over, I thought, that is something I've never heard of before. I've never heard of anybody doing all that stuff. And I thought, this is a gift from her. And it's a message from her for the world. It's something that, while she couldn't be here to do it, I'm here to do it. It's part of why I'm sharing the story. I also wrote a book about it, which has a lot of stuff on her background and so forth. Anybody who cares, you can see me. But I thought, okay, the immediate aftermath was, like you're up here, and all of a sudden you're at the bottom of the cliff. Kathy and Sheri were exhausted. They went home to get some sleep. Her friend Joy came in for a little while. The nurse came in. They cleaned up. They took all of their stuff away. Then the cremation people came and took Sheri away. And then the hospice people came and took all the equipment away. I'm sitting there in this empty living room. The rug is all mussed up. There's papers and stuff all over the place. The only thing I can think of to do is get out the vacuum cleaner and clean it up.
So you can see how Sheri was released after she went through all this. Lee was there, friends, family, hospice staff, even something we can classify as a modern day shaman helped. And all of this unraveled in an effort to get her to go along with the show. But at the end of the day, sadly, Sheri was her own worst enemy. We're all our worst own enemy. We're here, right? We've all experienced these attachments, and my heart goes out to Sheri, it goes out to Lee, it goes out to anyone who knew her, are involved with this. I'm not someone who is talking down on her or Lee or anyone involved. It's just that experiencer cases are what gives everything away. And then you add to it life experience, the way the human body works, the memory wipe. I mean, we can go on and on and on. I mean, there are so many examples and so many topics and subtopics that link into all this that create a very interesting blueprint. And it shows and leads us to the grand deception. And the question is when do we say enough is enough? When do we say we're done? We don't want to come back here. We don't want to deal with anything within this matrix. And at the time of natural death is when we can regain control. And I think it's important that leading up to that moment that we work on ourselves. Because if you're not working on yourselves, like we were talking about earlier, like, you know yourself better than anyone, right? So you know what attachments may cause a problem. You know all the different things that could possibly come and distract and interrupt you. So why not deal with those now? Why not deal with those over the next few years, few months, a few days, whatever you got to do. So that way you kind of have that clean slate and you're just buying your time. And then when it does come, you're all set. And you're all set now. Intention is key. Remember, don't allow yourself to believe in the white light. Don't believe in the tunnel. Don't believe in entities. Don't believe in anything that has a right to distract you. Give yourself that breathing room that you deserve. You don't want any interruptions, no interference. And you are the king or the queen, the being of your own castle, all right? And that is what should self-empower you. I mean, I understand this stuff can get a little dark. It's not easy to stomach at times, and I do encourage everyone to take breaks when they can if things are getting a little too much. I know I've done it, and it's important to do so. But at the same time, work on yourself, do what you got to do, and apply that intention in the here and now. Apply it when you wake up. Apply it before you go to bed. Apply it during the day. Have it all inclusive and keep it running. And go about your day and try to remember to enjoy yourself too, guys, because remember, it is the last time. So please make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you do what you got to do for yourself. It's really, really important. And I'd like to give a big thank you to Steve. Thank you so much for the very kind super chat. That's very generous. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
And just process. Think about what had just happened. What was her message? What was she trying to tell people? And I had already been writing the book, but it was about caregiving. The whole focus changed all of a sudden. 2 days later, I went down to Laguna Beach and sat on this cliff overlooking the main beach on a little stool with a small little wall in front of it and a tree up there. And I thought, gee, Sheri is probably up in that tree, just guiding whatever's going on. There were some birds up there. And then this little bird comes down, lands on the wall, walks a little bit, then looks up at me and chirps. Chirp, 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 chirp. Then he gave one last big chirp and flew off. And I had my notes there and I started writing what had just happened. And then as the bird flew off, then the next sentence was, Sheri started her flight to eternity. And I thought, this is the start of the book. She just gave me the first paragraph.
I think it's important to say, and maybe some of you have experienced it because I know I have, is when someone dies, you may experience just like what Lee experienced with a bird, or it may come in the form of some animal that is clearly in your face representing the death of a loved one or someone you cared about. It's ridiculously common. And actually, I've been compiling a member stream for that. Probably get to it before the end of the year because there's a lot to it. And it's really fascinating stuff. I highly recommend everyone research it. Or again, perhaps some of you out there have experienced it yourself. And you know, to say this, I mean, it just gets about is, it could come off as cold as it gets. All right. I mean, but then again, kind of going over all of this stuff can come off the wrong way when it's not intended to. And, you know, those moments after someone passes, if you have something like a bird clearly trying to get your attention and getting in your face and maybe landing in your palm or doing something to stand out, and it's right after someone died, that is a sick, sick hook that the Matrix plays on us. That really goes to show the extent that this whole thing goes. So when you think about all of the little pieces that occur, so in this Matrix, that one is really just kills me because it's just taking advantage of someone at their rawest form. And it's making them feel good. It's helping them in that moment. And it's great that that's occurring. But at the same time, really, it's sick. All right. That's all. It's just sick that this system would go through that much. And I'm sorry, but the bird is, in my opinion, almost like a programmed Matrix response because of how common it is. And again, it could be another animal. It could be something. It's going to be in your face if it ever occurs to you or if it has occurred to you. So appreciate the moment, but also realize that it's designed to suck you in.
I couldn't do the memorial until January. It wasn't there. But she'd given us directions. And she said, everybody wears red. You have to do laughter yoga because she was an instructor. And you have to end it with the Macarena.
That's funny as hell.
And we did. Believe it or not, we did. We had 150 people in the room. Jim was there guiding it. 3 or 4 of us gave funny stories about Sheri, including her stepsister and several of her partners. And Kathy came up to me afterwards and said, you know what happened right after the laughter yoga? Said, I felt Sheri pop into my head. And I gave her kind of a silent, well. She said, wow, this is so cool, isn't it? And I thought, yes, this whole thing was so cool. Sheri went out the way she wanted to. She went out with her friends, with her closest people, with all of the people she had fun with, present, did it in style, did it in a way nobody else did. And I looked at all of this, and as I started writing, I thought, what is the message here? And it's not about passing. It's really about living. It's about who we are as individuals and how we do our lives. And I thought about hers and all of the things that had held her back. And I thought, what is she doing? And she knew it. She spent her entire life in counseling. She became a marriage family therapist, alcohol rehabilitation specialty.
See, this is how much it impacted Sheri's life. And as I put in the description, Sheri chose that profession on purpose to better understand and help others, but also heal herself along the way. And who was there blocking Sheri at the end? Who was there? The ones that should have been looking out for her. Not talking about Lee, obviously. I'm talking about her mother.
Because she thought it would help her deal with it. She was pulling all of this baggage with her, like this. Instead of facing the future, she was half in the past. Could never let go of it. Until the last minute. I like to think that what we helped her do saved her from having to repeat this again.
If you only knew, Lee. We can hope, but by the looks of it, seems like the Matrix got her. Hate to say it, but...
because it resolved those relationships that were unresolved. And I realize we all have those. We all have those. And one of the biggest things in the self-help industry out there is getting over past traumas. We spend thousands of hours talking about it. And I looked back at my life and I thought, now wait a minute. Somewhere along the way, I let go of all that stuff. I don't know when, I don't know how. Might have been partly through the influence of our spiritual philosophy. But I thought, there's stuff, really bad stuff that I don't even remember. I had a great family, great college. Yeah, there was stuff there, but something good came out of it. And I thought, now wait a minute, that is one of the keys. Everybody looks at what bad came out of trauma. That was so horrible. They did that to me, so I can't do this. If that's familiar, I always said, what good came out of it? Whatever it was. I once had to quit a job because the boss was so horrible. I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go. There's no offers, there's no positions, there's nothing, but I have to get out of here. And it could have been really bad, and it was a horrible experience for a year. And I gave him my resignation notice like December 7th. There's no jobs happening during Christmas. Doesn't happen. 3 days later, but I knew something would. I didn't know what. 3 days later, I get the phone call from the person who'd started the newspaper with me years ago. He said, hey, I hear you just resigned. I said, yeah. I was a newspaper editor at the time. He said, I'm sitting here with Herb Sutton. He owns all the penny savers from Irvine to San Diego. He's just bought this little publication in Corona del Mar, and he's looking for an editor. Would you come down and have lunch with us? Yeah. I went down, had lunch. He said, come to work. We made a huge splash with this paper. We redesigned it, 4-color, put some things on that even the Register copied. And it even won the best newspaper in California 3 years in a row. I met my first wife because I went to work there. Imagine what had happened if I had not turned in that resignation at that instant. But I acted. I said, this is bad, but something else out there is better. And this is one of the messages I'm taking out to the world is, yes, we all have things that we don't like in our past. We all have things we deal with. We can either be like Sheri and say, I hated that to happen. I hated that to happen. I hated that to happen. Why did they do that to me? Or you can be like I turned out to be and say, well, I'm kind of glad that happened, bad as it was, because here's what the good part was. It got me this, it got me here, it got me out of that situation. What is the good in your life? What is the good that stands out? Because that's where we start facing forward. That's where we realize that this instant that we're in, right here, right now, that we're living, it's the only instant we have. It's the only thing we can change. We can't change the past. It's there. It's gone. Sheri kept trying to change the past. We helped her stop doing that.
Exactly. And it was also her detriment too, in my opinion, because of the attachments. Because of the unfinished business, the regrets that were unfortunately all charted out for her in her pre-birth life script. And then those things played out. She came here. Picked and was coerced into a certain life script that hurt her. Was trying to find herself and reason with what happened to her. Meets a good man like Lee later on. Ends up getting pancreatic cancer when she was kind of peaking, I guess you can say, at least according to Lee. And got thrown the curveball. I mean, really, you get a good snapshot of what Sheri's life was like. And she didn't deserve it. Nobody deserves to have to go through what this matrix dishes out. And the only reason we have kept coming back here is because of the veil of forgetfulness. And that cannot be minimized. That cannot be thrown away and just like, oh, it's no big deal. Anyone who just excuses it away, it's just insane to me. Because that is the crux of it. When you learn that you are this all-powerful creator being, capable of amazing things, and then you realize what you've been condensed down to because you kind of got lost, it's pretty aggravating. But at the same time, we are learning our way out. Learning our way out through non-interference, sovereignty, liberation. I say it over and over and over and over again. And the reason why is because that's the important thing. Anyone who's telling you like, oh, you've got to die at a 45-degree angle, or you got to go between the grid of this and that, they don't know what they're talking about. They're lost in the illusion. I'm not saying I have it all figured out, but I sure as heck know that tangoing with the illusion is a recipe for disaster. That much I do know. Other than that, you know, whatever happens, happens when we leave here. But I think as long as we kind of have the basic layout of sovereignty, liberation, non-interference, you know, all these attachments, bye-bye. Disconnecting from the soul group, bye-bye, everything. I think we'll be just fine. And if we're wrong, if all this is wrong, guess what? It's not going to freaking matter. But if it is wrong, it's going to matter. That's the difference. The consequences of not aligning with that are much greater than just saying, hey, all right, I'm just going to go with this and hope for the best. Not just hope for the best, demand the best. It's my intention that it is the best on my own terms, not through some multiple levels of matrix fuckery. All right. And that's what this realm does well. And that is what the astral realms do very well too. We see the crossover. We see the bleed over between both realms, or all these realms. We don't get a peek on what's going on the outside of here because it's designed that way. Limited perception, and these layers, which Lee even admitted to, and many other people have admitted to, it's even in spiritual texts that these different layers exist, the different bardo realms, on and on and on. I mean, these things are out there. There's some form of knowledge in relation to it. Now, can we say that it's all true? No. But what we do know is, again, we're under the veil of forgetfulness, lifetime after lifetime, and that it's just best to play it safe. You deserve it. We all deserve it. But once we kind of started aligning with all these matrix illusions and giving it the attention and the credence that it wants so desperately, that's when I think, you know, the train runs off the track. And I don't think it takes much. And that's why asserting your intention, taking advantage of the time that you have here till the end at natural death is key, because you're drilling that in there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Your intention is clear, and you're, you know, asserting it day in and day out, relentlessly. And we'll all see what happens, right?
I don't want anybody else to have to go to 5 minutes before passing to do that. So that is the key message that I have. It's powerful. I'm spreading it as wide and far as I can. Sheri's story says things about current life and afterlife that we don't think about often. There are consequences to what we do, to what we say, to what we think, to how we act. And we have the power to change those. So we have a little time for questions.
And they cut it off right there at the end. So just to let you know, I wish we had the Q&A, but we don't. But I mean, you know, you can kind of gather where everything went with all this. And I thought it was a really, really amazing video. Well documented. A lot of people involved. And poor Sheri. let's just hope that she finds her way out soon and asserts herself like she was doing within the illusion, within the Matrix construct. So, yeah, it's a tough one. I'd like to give Mrs. HS a big thank you for the donation over on Stripe yesterday. I believe it was yesterday. I just saw it come through. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And to everyone else who sent over a super chat tonight, AA, Pale Horse Rider, and of course, also Steve. Thank you, Steve. Much appreciated. All right. And probably going to, let me just see. Probably going to wrap things up. Wanted to also give a big shout out to Jimmy in the chat for his help tonight. Jimmy, why don't you post up your music channel? Jimmy's dropping some badass music tracks, and Jimmy's always helping out with the channel during the live streams and behind the scenes. And also wanted to give a big thank you to T for your help tonight. Boopser, thank you so much for your help tonight, and welcome aboard. And well, welcome aboard as a mod, I guess. Say Zona, good to see you. Joey, Peter, Super Unknown, Bit of Venom. Who else we got out here? Tom. And if Tom S is out there, not sure if you're listening tonight, brother, but I hope you're doing well. It's nice seeing you last night. Ivor. And anyone else that I might have missed. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed this one. I know I did. And let's just hope that Sheri and Lee and everyone out there, everyone, sees the levels that this Matrix goes to further suck us in, and by its illusions and deceptions. I also wanted to just say a few more things. I do have a Rumble account now. Anyone who has a Rumble account, feel free to subscribe to the channel. That's available in the description tab. And then also trying to get the Rumble up to 100 subscribers. I think we're like a little more than halfway there, almost, I think like 58 or something like that. So once it reaches 100, the live streaming option opens up over on Rumble. So I'm hoping to mirror things over there. I'm going to be purchasing a multi-streaming service and going to use that. It's going to run about $2.25 a year, but it's going to be able, my computer just can't handle it. It just can't, my internet, it just combined, it can't handle it. So it's just easier to pay it and be able to stream it in multiple areas so that the word gets out, not just on YouTube, but across the net. Obviously, what's great about Odyssey is it is sent over there. I'm also multi-streaming at the moment on Twitch. So anyone watching on Twitch, hello. And I wanted to give Vegan Skeptic a big shout out. Thank you so much for your membership over on Twitch. I appreciate you, brother, and hope you're doing well. Forgot to mention that the other day. And also have a Twitter and Instagram where on those two platforms, I'll usually post an announcement about an hour in advance to each stream, sometimes a little more, but usually at least an hour. I'll pop up a notification out on those two places and let you know what time and include the link and all that stuff. I also have a mailing list, email list, because of what's happened with YouTube, and it's not going to go away. I tried. This has been ongoing for almost, well, what are we? I mean, 5.5, 6 weeks now, I think. And, anyways, it would be great if you could sign up for the mailing list. Let's just put it that way. I also have 2 YouTube backup channels, just in case something should ever happen. But I would say the mailing list is probably the safest. And of course, Twitter, Instagram is good too. And also have YouTube memberships. If you're interested in getting a little extra content each month, feel free to check that out. Levels 2 and above get access to the Discord server. We also have a monthly members live stream included with the level 2 and some early release videos too. So feel free to check those out if you're interested. And again, your support is always appreciated but never expected. And yeah. And then I also have Stripe. And Stream Elements. So when I'm streaming, Stream Elements is okay to donate to, and Stripe is cool to donate on off hours. I didn't understand that Stream Elements was strictly for streaming, and that I had to go through this whole thing with Stream Elements. But anyways, that's what the Stripe is there for. It's almost like a PayPal. And again, I don't expect anything, but it's always appreciated. And I will see you likely sometime tomorrow. Take care of yourselves out there. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please help spread the word about the Soul Trap. If you can, share the channel on your various social medias, or if you got a blog post or a blog account or anything out there, Facebook, all that stuff. I was actually thinking about joining. You know what? Let me take a poll. Okay, so like I canceled my Facebook account. God, it's got to be 6 years ago. But I do use a friend's account. They let me borrow it to kind of do research on. And I've just been reluctant to sign up because of everything that I learned about them. And so that's why I'm putting the poll up there. So if you don't mind voting in the poll, I'm curious. I may create a Facebook page for the channel. We'll see. Yeah. Yeah, it's just you know, I didn't even know Instagram was owned by Facebook. I had no clue. No clue when I signed up, and then I was like, what's and then of course it was there, but I didn't realize it when I signed up, and I was like, oh well, I guess I might as well sign up for Facebook too, which I haven't, but it's the equivalent because they're run by the same crowd. Same parasites. All right. Much love to you too, Michael. All right, my friends. Probably wrap this up. But yeah, I was just curious who had Facebook, who didn't. Maybe I'll create an account over there too. Trying to just, I guess, cover all the bases. Because I don't like having everything in one place. And after seeing what's happened to other people here, and can't hurt, right? Anyways, I appreciate you all. Take care of yourselves, and we will see each other again very soon. Probably this afternoon, or early evening, I should say. All right. Thank you again.